Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&As, and it's Christmas Eve, and I haven't forgot about you guys. I'm still going to knock these out. So let's go ahead and get to that first question. Alright. Hey Coach, see a lot of stuff about RPE over percentages lately. Your thoughts on this style of training, and would you recommend it? Alright, RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion. And while, yes, it's gotten popular again, it's mentioned a lot on YouTube, I legitimately believe the vast overwhelming majority of lifters should absolutely not be using RPE. And that's because most people don't have enough training experience or body awareness to do this. At any given time, what you're going to find is that 80 to 90% of people who are listening to YouTube Fitness are novices. You're noobs. People who cannot consistently tell with almost 100% accuracy if they're within one rep of failure or not can't do RPE. It's going to be a complete disaster. In other words, the minimum level of ability that you need to be able to use an RPE program when you go to do any big exercise, squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, rows, anything, if you legitimately can't tell how many more reps you have at any given point, like if you see me right here doing a deadlift, if I pull a triple and I don't know for a fact if I could get a fourth or a fifth rep based upon that triple, then I do not have the requisite experience or knowledge of my body or training to ever consider an RPE program. Only people who can guess based upon how a rep feels if they have 0, 1, or 2 reps left in the tank every single time with 100% accuracy, only those people should be considering an RPE program. If you attempt lifts and you go, man, I missed that, I can't believe it, I thought I had another rep, you don't have enough experience to run an RPE program. It's that simple, and that's the way you have to look at it. They're a valuable tool used correctly in the right hands. I just think most people who lift are not at the experience level to actually consider them. They're going to set you back. They're not going to work well. All right, next question. Hey Jason, you always mention that you do hours of cardio when you're cutting, but I was wondering if you can give us the exact amount of cardio you're doing and if you are doing more or less with your current maintaining phase. I'm doing a hair less overall weekly, but it doesn't mean every day. I did my cutting dropping down to 220 using 3+ hours every single day. I average about 3 hours most days now, the only exception being days that I squat or deadlift, which is 2 days a week. I sometimes only do an hour on those days. Some of those days I do an hour and a half or 2 hours, but I usually only do about an hour following that. And it's because they're just a bit more fatiguing. I need the extra recovery in my legs. And so I just use this as active recovery. But that amount of cardio I'm doing combined with a hair more carbohydrates is basically allowing me to sit at 220, hold tight. I fluctuate a little week to week. Some weeks I do bump up to 224, 225, and then, a week later I'll be down to 221. So it's kind of just floating around up in that range. But that's always with my boots on, obviously. So the reason I call that 220 is that if I'm weighing low 220s wearing boots, I'm 220. So that's pretty much where I call it. So yeah, I'm still doing a fair amount, and it's all list cardio, and it's just for the nutrient partitioning I mentioned. It's not necessarily there for cutting. It's just to allow me to eat more carbs, more food, so that I can recomposition and continue to make gains and get stronger. And it's working. I am getting stronger right now, slowly, but it's happening. So it seems to be working out nice. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I recently just got my blood work done. Typically get checked once a year. My total test levels came back 551 nanograms per deciliter. I know that's considered normal and average because the range I seem to find online is anywhere from 200 to 1,000. However, I figured as a 25-year-old male, it should be slightly towards the higher side, not right down the middle. Also worth noting, last year I was 639. So the drop has also worried me, and no, I'm not experiencing any of the low test side effects, but mentally just makes me wonder. I would like to hear your thoughts. Thank you. All right, the reason it could be lower versus your last test is we have normal fluctuations. But here's the thing. That range exists because people have different genetics. In other words, when you start talking 850 to 1,000, yes, that has to be in the range because that's a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of people who reach that. Talking less than 1% of the population. But because there are people who are completely natural and healthy who produce that much testosterone, the range has to exist to account for people of various genetics. Your 551 is perfectly healthy and normal, right? It's normal. And you shouldn't be experiencing low test sides. People don't experience low test sides on 400 either. So you're 551. If you were at 400, you shouldn't experience any. Most people don't start experiencing any low testosterone sides until they hit to 300 or less. So if you were experiencing any and your blood work came back like that, then it's all in your head. It's psychosomatic. You're stressed out or something else going on. But your levels are normal and healthy. Like a 550 at 25 years old tells me that you're probably in pretty decent health. You're in good health. You probably aren't deficient in any nutrients. You probably get enough rest. That's what it tells me, that you're good to go. You shouldn't be worried at all. You're normal and healthy. And if you legitimately expect that you should be at 700 or 800 or something like that, I'm sorry, 90% of the population doesn't produce that much testosterone and didn't when they were your age either. It's the real world. You're perfectly healthy as far as that number is concerned. We don't know with anything else going on in your life, but I'm going to assume if you're producing 551, your overall lifestyle is probably decently healthy. You're doing good. All right, next question. Thanks for answering mine last week, but I have another question. Does your body require more calories to lift a heavier weight? For example, would it take more calories to squat 400 than it would to squat 350 or even 395? If so, does this mean if you were to eat the same amount of calories and you keep getting stronger, will that make you burn extra calories to burn fat? Thanks. All right, brother. The amount of calories involved in actually lifting the weight is minuscule. In theory, does it take more calories to lift 400 pounds than it does to lift 399? Yes, but more, not necessarily calories, it would be fractions of a calorie. Now, what you need to consider here is that people argue all day long that a certain amount of muscle mass only burns so many calories, that actually if you gain 20 pounds of muscle, your base metabolic rate would only increase a very, very tiny amount. Blah, 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 like 50 calories a day or something. Here's the problem with that. That's hypothetical. What we have noted in the real world, observing healthy young men for decades, those of us who've done this, is that people's maintenance calories go up enormously when they are training hard and gaining muscle. And if I were to guess, because we don't have real studies on this, but if I were to guess, it seems to me that the actual process of building muscle burns far, far more calories than anyone is estimated, because I've seen too many people over the years who've run basic strength training programs who stalled on body weight gains once they're 6 months in or 7 months in, who stall on their bulking calories. And sometimes they're stalling at 500 calories more than what they started at. Meaning, I've seen people who ran my novice program early on when I first started it, who I was talking to, staying in touch with early on when I was doing this YouTube gig. And I had people who started their bulk at 2,500 calories and they had put on about 5 pounds. Well, they had to jump to 2,800 and then they gained a bit more weight and then they stalled again. And I had one guy who he got about 7 or 8 months into my novice program. He got to where he went from squatting like 140 for reps to squatting 300 for reps. And his deadlift and everything goes up. And he started the bulk at 2,500 calories and at 3,300 calories a day. And he was actually using a scale and tracking 800 calories more than his original bulk. He stalled and stayed at the exact same body weight for a month. And 800 calorie increase over his previous bulk less than a year ago turned into his maintenance. And that's purely because of the training, because he didn't change any other lifestyle factors. So at a certain threshold is that the actual act of building muscle and recovering from high volumes of heavy barbell training increases your caloric needs. And what will happen is that eventually, unless your training is perfect at maintenance calories, you will stop gaining muscle and strength eventually, actually. So yeah, in theory, you'll build muscle and burn fat at the same time, but you better have your training and lifestyle dialed in 100% perfect, or that will actually stop, because you will simply not be able to match the recovery and food intake correctly to get everything growing. It becomes very, very tricky to recomposition. You need to know what you're doing. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.